Welcome back to The Real Story. Our next guest is Connecticut GOP Party Chair J.R. Romano. J.R., thanks for taking the time to virtually talk with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is quite an experience.
It is for all of us. And we've had some big news come out, especially when it comes to the Republican Party, since we've all been in quarantine right now. Two of your main faces, Republican Len Fasano, head of the Senate, or the minority leader in the Senate for the Republican Party, and Themis Klarides both saying that they are not running for re-election. You know, they were powerful voices, are powerful voices in the state for the Republican Party. So were you surprised by this? Tell us your reaction when they both came to you and said, we're not running again.
Well, you know, I think in both cases, they've been dedicating much of their, I'd say more than a decade, to trying to fix this state, trying to get common sense legislation passed in spite of the Democrat majorities. And I think that for both of them, they, you know, taken a little bit of time off for the you know, the scars they have on trying to fight this good fight. But they're not going away. I don't think Len or Themis, it'll be the last that you hear of either of them. And so I think it provides some unique challenges for the party, obviously going into an election cycle, you know, protecting those seats because both were very popular. But I think that we have some very talented elected officials already in the legislature, in that Golden Dome. But they're going to be missed, but I know they're not going far.
Well, Senator Fasano had said on The Real Story that he would still be interested in doing some kind of possibly local politics. He seemed to be, you know, driven to have be around his family more, and he had put a lot of time in. And so if you have any insight on that, let me know. Now, Representative Klarides is not shying away from the fact that she might run for higher office, which leads many of us to wonder which one she's going to go for, governor, senator. So when you've talked with her, and what are you hearing, and where do you think she would be good to run?
Well, I think what Themis is going to take this time to evaluate what her passion is and where she thinks she can help the best or the most. You know, obviously having a lot of legislative experience, she's probably going to evaluate whether she'd be happier or better served to possibly take a run at the United States Senate seat. Or, you know, if she wants to take her leadership and her skill set and her understanding of the Capitol to potentially run for governor. You know, I think either way, Themis is going to be a force regardless of what she chooses.
So if she was going to run for Senate, would that be in Senator Blumenthal's district?
Well, he's up in 2 years, so it would be Senator Blumenthal, yes.
Right, because it's staggered. Okay. All right, so who do you have coming up that you feel like can lead the Republican Party moving forward?
Well, we have a tremendous amount of talent. I mean, Vinnie Candelora has been by Themis's side for a very long time. You have Rosa Rabimbis out of Naugatuck in the House. You have Mike France. I mean, the list is endless of these talented Republicans. You also have on the Senate side, you have, you know, my personal favorite because he represents my old hometown, which is George Logan, probably one of I mean, a rising star in our party. He's been doing these Facebook Live updates on the COVID and what the state's doing. You have Kevin Kelly, Kevin Witkos. I mean, there's Heather Summers. There's a tremendous amount of leadership in that building. And so I'm actually excited about what the future can hold for us. But again, the Len and Themis are a big loss, but they're not going far. You know, they're not moving out of state. They're not, you know, this is, I cannot stress enough. They're still going to be heavily involved with helping raise money, you know, doing campaign appearances and conversations and strategy and messaging because of their breadth and depth and experience over the last decade.
You have an election coming up in November, and no one's really been able to campaign for it super effectively at this point, obviously, because we're all social distancing. But, the mail-in voting has been tossed around a lot by the Secretary of the State. Our primary has been pushed off until August. Give me some of your thoughts around holding the primary and then mail-in voting. Should we change the way we vote? If, and again, August could be a different story, but we don't know if there could be rolling shutdowns at some point because of a recurrence.
So let's just tackle the primary first, so that all your viewers understand. This is purely political. What the Democrats are doing, and Secretary of State and the governor are saying, everyone's health is so important. We can't risk to lose one life because of COVID, but yet they don't have the courage to cancel the Republican primary, which I've asked for. The Rocky De La Fuentes has zero path to victory, but yet Ned lacks the courage to cancel the Republican primary, even if it's going to limit some exposure to, because this is what they're talking about constantly. The reason they want to do mail-in ballot is to limit exposure. And the thing that no one seems to kind of grasp when I talk about this, voting in a primary is not a right. You exercise it. It's something you exercise as a party member. November's different, but these primaries, specifically the presidential primaries, are basically how we jockey for delegates at the National Convention. The National Convention is actually what codifies who the nominee is. So basically what this is Denise Merrill and Bernie and Ned Lamont are afraid to offend the Bernie Sanders wing of their party and is unwilling to cancel and have the courage the way New York did, because New York canceled their primary. So that's problem number one. But as far as the mail-in balloting side, because we don't know if this is going to continue through November, we don't know if there are other primaries, which are very important. The presidential primary is a little different, but if there's primaries for local legislative races, I think it's a different question. I am not opposed to mail-in balloting.
Hold on, before we get to the mail-in ballots,
Sure.
Wouldn't Rocky Fuentes, he has said that he wants to stay on the ballot, right? He has not withdrawn from the ballot.
Correct, but based under our state statute, he never should have been put there. And Denise Merrill was basically being a little petty to cause a problem for President Trump to add him. He doesn't meet the criteria. And when challenged, Denise Merrill will not show why she put him on the ballot, right? But again, They did it in New York. They canceled the presidential primary. Ned Lamont, within his executive authority, can certainly cancel the Republican primary here. They won't do it because, it's all political. They will not do it because it's political. It has nothing to do with anyone's rights.
I know that he said before that they have said before that they feel like canceling, voting is a person's right. I understand what you're saying.
But Jen, but I want to go back. The Secretary of State's office prematurely sent out a press release, and they had to walk it back a little bit when they realized Bernie Sanders, after Michigan, didn't have a path. They were basically saying, we're going to cancel it. There's going to be no primary. So they admitted that it's all centered around the Bernie Sanders side of it, and that the Republicans are kind of this ancillary thing. The Republican Party chairman is basically saying, if we're talking about not risking human life, then they should cancel the Republican primary. It is not a right to vote. As a Democrat, you don't have a right to vote in the Republican primary. I cannot stress that enough. This is just how two private entities determine who their nominee is. It is not like the November elections. That is very different.
Okay, we're running out of time here. I just want to get your quick opinion on the mailing in voting, if you can.
The problem is that your viewers are probably saying the most simple thing, which is, well, it makes sense to do this. But the reality is the Secretary of State has been completely inept when it comes to keeping the voter rolls clean. And it's basically, when you look at the foundation of our electoral system, there are massive cracks. We know that voter fraud through absentee ballot happened is as recently as 2019 in Bridgeport, because there was a court case where people were testified that the votes were stolen. Denise Merrill, all these groups that want the mail-in ballot are not talking about any further steps to secure the integrity of the elections and to ensure that votes aren't stolen. And that's what I have a problem with.
Now, a judge did.
I'm sorry?
A judge did uphold that election. The judge did uphold that election.
Jen, I completely understand that, but they also know that voter fraud happened. We know of 35 ballots that voter fraud happened. It doesn't mean that it was going to change the way the election is, but as someone sitting here in 2018, we lost 20 races by 1%. There were 8 recounts. These are elections that were within 10, 15, 20 votes. And yes, in the Bridgeport case, it was overwhelmingly for Joe Ganim. But to say that voter fraud doesn't happen is just not factually accurate. And the reality is that when you go back to stealing people's votes, we don't have a system here. We don't have any security. So here's a prime example of something they can do. There's software out there, there's technology where you can cross-reference someone's signature with the Department of Revenue Services, with the Department of Motor Vehicle. We don't do that. So there's what I'm saying is that there should be talk of understanding the signature requirement. We should eliminate ballot harvesting, where someone goes out and actually harvests these ballots and fill out applications. And but there's no talk of ensuring the integrity of these elections. And that's what worries me. Jen, look, in Middlesex County right now, 113% of Middlesex County's population is registered to vote because this Secretary of State is not keeping the voter rolls clean. We have dead people who are registered to vote. And the reality is when you're mailing out all these ballots to you don't know who's getting them. And this is where it calls into question, if you're talking an election of 10, 5, 20 votes, it gets a little dicey. You could be not only stealing votes, stealing elections.
Okay. We will have to talk to this about her. Sorry, we will have to talk about this to her for sure to get her side on what's going on. JR, always fun to talk with you and talk about politics and toss around what's going on in the state. We have to go, though. I'm like 2 minutes over. And,
thank you, Jen. I appreciate it.
Keep in touch. And you and your family stay well, okay?
Thank you, you too.